Okay, I think we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for those that were able to join this School to Work webinar. And just a few things. Marsha Threlkheld, one of our subject matter experts who most of you know, she does a lot of the content at our community of practice that we have twice a year, and she's going to be presenting today on transition and giving us some ideas on how to kind of align our transition goals between families, teachers, providers, and the individual. So we're excited to hear from her. Just a few things. Marsha will be taking questions throughout the presentation. So if you would like to ask a question, you're welcome to enable your mic and ask it. If you don't want to do that, then you can type it into the chat box and I'll read it. Otherwise, if you're not asking a question, we will ask that you please keep your mic on mute just to minimize the background noise and feedback from our computers. So also, this webinar is going to be recorded, and I will send out the link probably tomorrow. I'll email that out to everybody. But I think that's all. And Marsha, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Kelly. Transition programs, getting everybody on the same page. If you have been at this for a year or two, you have certainly realized that if we don't have everybody on the same page, if your families, if the paraeducators, everyone in the school building, students don't fully realize what our goals are and what the School to Work project is about, you'll oftentimes feel like you might be taking a couple of steps forward and then one step back. It's the same for employment organizations. If it's not clear, not only in leadership, but with your employment providers, what it is you're doing with the School to Work project and how that works, so that they can speak about it with the community, speak about it with families, etc., so forth. If everyone's not on the same page and able to articulate that, it's going to be problematic at some point or the other. So today's webinar, we're going to look at clarifying and building goals for your program, for your agency and School to Work, learning how to communicate a clear and guiding vision about your program or about School to Work. Learn how to jointly work with all members of your team to understand and articulate employment first and community integration and how that connects to your efforts. And learn how your transition program can decide its own system to keep everybody updated and to be gathering information from what's going on out in the community and bringing that back to the school and sending it the other direction as well. So we'll be looking at how to develop that vision, speaking with your team about what's important to achieve, keeping the most important things that you want to in the foremost of everyone's mind, setting up those communication systems and using data that you're collecting in the field to come back and inform your program. Having materials that you can use to promote your program, to make sure that families understand what it is you're doing, making sure that the business community understands, and then listening to everyone and keeping that focus true. So first and foremost, really quickly, understanding employment first and community integration for all, how we can get that message out to everyone. If I click on this live link, it will take me to the Employment First page of ODEP, and it has some wonderful materials for you. And if you have downloaded the PowerPoint today, you'll have this live link as well. And if I scroll down, oh my goodness, look, there's videos from various people. And look, oh my goodness, it's Trish. So these people are talking about Employment First and how it plays out across the country. So some of these materials you can use in your own staff orientations and your staff meetings, etc., so forth. There's also some lovely materials that the project has handed out, but I think this is a place that you can go back to for more information and resources. And if we understand that Employment First is really looking at employment as the first option, and quite honestly, education for all was ahead of us, right? Education for all believed that everybody deserved and could benefit from an education. And certainly when we're talking about employment, we believe that everybody can work, everybody should have that option, and everybody can contribute to the workforce. So it's about bringing everybody on board, bringing them into the community, looking at true citizenship for everyone. And we know that some people might need some help in finding their spot in the community. And so we are using customized employment, but it looks very different for each individual student. Another thing that you really need to engage in with your families, and it's parent leaders who taught me about this, is that Employment First is not guaranteeing a full day of employment for students. And so I think we have to work with families to develop that meaningful day, at the heart of which will be employment or a job, just like it is for everybody. But that we need to look at what their full week might look like. Some of the instructors, and Kelly, are you trying to get a hold of me? I'm seeing a little pop-up message from you.
I am not, but Lavinia says that she is not able to hear, so I was just messaging her. So we're just working on that.
Okay, thank you. Working with families and students to look at that meaningful day, I think that's part of the information that we need to get out there when we're talking about the School to Work program. So I know teachers who the last 2 years of school, they have a weekly calendar that each student is using and taking back and forth and working with families to fill that out with students. So they're looking at, here's where, for instance, when they're in school, here's when school is, here's the things I'm doing when we're not in school. And over the summer, working with families to really fill those calendars out as well, as a way to realize that when they leave school, they'll have work. They might have going to the gym, they might have going to the library, they might have, this is the time I'm going to get together with friends at Starbucks, etc. Whatever it is, but to realize that that needs to be part of our information that's going out as well. Developing a vision, a mission, and values too. There's a way to work with your team, and if we're talking about a school program, although this also should be in play for employment organizations as well. But when we're looking at a school transition program, I have gone out and facilitated these kinds of mission, vision, value meetings with programs. It certainly wouldn't have to be somebody like me who led or facilitated those, but for the program, so they have the paraeducators, they have the transition teachers, they have the building leadership, etc., so forth. Everyone's coming together and they're looking at, what are we trying to achieve with our transition program? Or what is it we're trying to achieve with School to Work? What are our values and what's our vision around that? And I have a couple of examples. So this is the notes that were done up from one that I had done with the Shoreline Transition Program. And realize this was for their entire program to include School to Work, but not just School to Work. And their mission was to prepare students to be productive integral and valued members of society in collaboration with families in the community. And then their values is that we believe students will be as independent as possible, they'll be self-advocates, etc., so forth, and you can read their list there. And students are vital members of the workforce. Students and families and their support teams have goals. And then what's their vision of what would be occurring in their program? Students will have lots of vocational experiences, later narrowing the list to what is desired and realistic. Students will speak up and they're self-advocates, etc., so forth. But now this is what they then use as an anchor for everyone who is in that meeting, but also as a way to inform the new staff that come in. And this is something that should be shared with families as well. So it clarifies what's going on in the program. And I have one more of these. It's for another school transition program that I worked with. This one was from Federal Way. Their mission was students will leave this program with the ability to be contributing, independent, and active members of their society in their personal lives and in the workplace. And then the list of things that they value and the list of what their vision was. But the practice of these people setting together and putting this together, you can see how it was very clarifying. And as I was facilitating these meetings, there were some people who realized they were operating on a different premise, that this was a way to bring everyone together. And this was just a template that I had up on the wall when I was facilitating, and we filled it out together, and then I did up the notes for them. Speaking with your team, whether it's an employment organization or a school transition program, you want to state what your vision is. You want to have that written down as well and have that available for everyone. You want to make sure that families and job seekers know what your focus and vision is. And we've probably all also had the opportunity to learn that you can't just do this once. You can't just put out that information once, that we have to continue to do it because people will hear it at different times and new people will be coming in and out of our programs as well. So we have to keep that effort up and have a way for new employees to get that and be able to check back in and ask us questions about that mission and vision and values. Programs creating brochures or one-page flyers. I've seen lovely ones done by employment organizations and also lovely information on websites. And sometimes employment organizations are making these up just about their school to work efforts. And they have a specific brochure for that they might be using with families and with employers. And then school transition programs also having brochures. And I'm going to show you a couple before we log off today from school transition programs. And one of them is oriented towards employers and the other one is oriented towards families. I think it's possible to have one jointly, but certainly you could have different ones. It is helpful when you're out there developing work experience sites to be able to use that brochure to inform employers in the community, but also to have that to go out to families. When you do family information nights, there might be one member of the household who shows up, and if they go home with that information, they're going to be able to share that with other members of the family as well, and they're going to be able to come back to that piece of information. So this is a brochure from a transition program, the Shoreline Transition Program. And this was one of the fold brochures, right? So it has a picture of one of their students working that's on the front. And this is conceivably what was on the back of the brochure. And we'll look at the inside in just a second. But it also shows who's eligible for their program, where it's located. And this one happens to be, their classes are held in the community college. And this is a regular public school transition program, but then they really use and access the whole community, and they're making sure that that's known. This is the inside of their brochure, so it has their mission right up there at the beginning, and that's clarifying. Another nice photo. I like many things about this. There is something on this page that I don't like, and that is in the second column near the bottom when it says, our students can assist employers with, and it lists a variety of things, which is very nice, but I think it's a little misleading to say that our students can assist employers with. I would say something more like, our students will have the opportunity to learn in your workplace by doing things such as laundry and janitorial services, food preparation, etc., so forth. I also would like a list which had more variety to it even than this list, because the Department of Labor, of course, makes it clear with community-based work experiences that students are not replacing workforce, so it's not as if students are coming out and doing jobs for the employer. So again, I would rather have it read something such as, our students will have the opportunity to learn in your business by doing things such as, and then you could list jobs. So I hope that's clear. That's the only thing I don't like about this one. And when I'm through with my PowerPoint, there's another one I'd like to show as well. Orienting families right from the beginning, and have an orientation packet for the transition program that again clarifies what the mission is, who's eligible, having things like, and this is what we expect students to have when they come to the transition program. I just listed a few here. State ID, to have a wallet, to have a backpack, to have clothes that they're going to be out in the community in, that if they use assistive tech, to have that charged and with them, etc., so forth. But right from the get-go, to have those kinds of expectations out there for families, so they know the student is not just going to be in the classroom necessarily all day, but they're going to be out in the community. Also, I think listing helpful things to work on at home that are going to assist students to succeed in the community, such as working on greeting people and students being independent on ordering things at restaurants. We know sometimes they're using assistive technology or pictures, or all kinds of ways to do that. Working on phone calls. At home, students working on setting up appointments, or working on setting up outings with their friends and that kind of thing. But all of that are very helpful skills for students to have that are going to translate to all kinds of things. And I think working with families to get a broader sense of what it is that they could be helping in their student to learn at home. Adopting a communication system. So how are we going to get information out on an ongoing basis to those families? Not just this is who we are, but all those things that are coming up on an ongoing basis. How are we going to stay informed? How are we going to stay updated? So some things that I know transition programs to be utilizing are things such as web pages, and we'll be looking at a website from one school transition program when we're through with the PowerPoint here. Facebook pages, I know some transition programs to be utilizing those. Of course, the old newsletter going back and forth. Information nights, staff meetings on an ongoing basis, and other ways for communication to be going back and forth as well. I think hitting it in more ways than one is also the way to go, because as we know, some people are going to use web pages and some people aren't going to use web pages. And so different ways for that to occur. And if your program, be it an employment organization or a transition program, have a couple of ways in which they're doing that, I would say that's the best. Using data to see how you are doing and letting others know about that. So if students are out in community-based work experiences, there should be a way that you're gathering information about how it is that student is doing out there, what all the tasks are, how independent they are, how they're progressing, and of course, tracking the number of hours as we're required to do in community-based work experience sites. Do you have a form to do that? And then how often is that form filled out? And how is that form sent back to the transition program or the IEP teacher so they know what's going on at the community-based work site? And then we also know employment organizations are also looking at ways for what it is they're doing in the community with individuals to be sent back as accessible information so it's ready and can be looked at to share with families, etc., so forth. A number of programs are going to this information being put in something such as a smartphone or a tablet, and that information being able to be put on a site which would be available for the IEP teacher or whatever, or be sent back to them, and are moving away from the paper forms for sure. I'm going to show you some paper forms. Now, certainly, these could be in devices and be sent back and forth, or photos of the paper forms could be taken at a minimum, and those could be sent back to the IEP teacher. Or we love those scanning apps in our smartphones that allow us to scan different documents and then be able to email or text those to someone else as well, but some way for that information to be translated. And I would encourage you to move away from just filling out the paper forms and having those in a notebook, which is just going to be in the one location where that notebook is and not available in any other way. So deciding what that system is going to look like, and we'll be looking at a couple of different forms today from transition programs. That's where I've gotten them from, and how they're using those as well. And I also think transition programs, we can learn from some of the employment providers who may have ways in which they are collecting that data in the community and making sure that that's available as well. So before we go to some of these forms, in conclusion, just what we've talked about in this first portion of our webinar is to revisit and look at Employment First and what that is. Have some of those basic materials on what Employment First is available for your staff, know where that is online, and understand that this is part of a national movement and it's connected to federal policy in WIOA, working to create and share your vision and mission. And this is worth revisiting every year or two. So if you've done it once, setting back down, looking at your mission and vision, does it still hold true? Do we need to tweak it, etc., so forth? But if you have staff retreats, for instance, that's a good time to do it as well. And we want to write that down and make sure that's available in writing and in materials to share with all the staff. We need to set up all those communication systems, from websites, right, to brochures, to data collection, and making sure that the information is getting back and forth from what's going on in the field back to the school program or back to the employment organization, and then looking at that data and using that to reflect upon and to see how it is that we're doing and how it is things are going for that student. So in looking at a few pieces of this information, and this PowerPoint was sent out to you earlier today in an email from Kelly. So this brochure is one I very much like. And it's from a school transition program. Here's the front page. And it has, again, their mission statement is right there. This is a program I don't know. This is a resource I found online at some point, but I like it very much. And so it's the transition programs for somewhere in Florida. Information about the program, the eligibility criteria and location, basic stuff. And then inside, what we work on for employability skills, and the sorts of things that those students will actually be doing in the program. And then they have 2 success stories. They're making it clear that students are going to be working on employment. And I would say that this brochure is geared towards families, right, and students. And that one was sent out to you as well. This is actually just a better look at the brochure we looked at earlier, and this one I say is geared towards employers. And most of the transition programs that I've worked with for a period of years in the Seattle area all have their own versions of these. And then if we start to look at a few of those forms that are about keeping that information about what's going on at work experience sites, which will make yourself definitely be in compliance with the Department of Labor, but also be able to get that information back to the IEP teacher and others about what's going on there. Here's one very basic one, and if you don't have anything like this that you're doing, I would just suggest that. Now, these forms are ones that are just out there that you can use as a resource. You can use these if you would like. If you would like to create your own forms, I suggest you have something. These are not mandatory forms through our School to Work project. We do have some forms that have been mandatory forms that we want you to use, such as the student tracking form. That's something we're asking you all to use. And I know that Ashley and Patty with the customized employment work have forms that they are asking us all to use as part of this project. These forms are just resources for you. If you don't have any way that you're keeping track of what's going on at work experience sites and feeding that back, then I offer these for you. So this is a very simple one that's looking at, so this would be filled out every time a student, a particular student, so this is for one student, each student would have their own form. Each time that they are out, the shift that they worked, how many cumulative hours that was, and then notes about what occurred. There's also information right above that chart that indicates the type of experience it is, career assessment, and that work-related work experience in the community of 90 hours in a job cluster is most often the one that we are dealing with here. I do want to point out under that. So again, this is just the type that is right above the chart portion in this form. There's something that says volunteer, no hour restriction, and that's true, but I want to remind you the volunteerism, that particular category, volunteerism has to be either at some place that is a nonprofit or government. Those are places that people can volunteer. A for-profit entity, such as a store or an office for a business, you cannot volunteer there. Now, you can do work experience there, right? Not to exceed those 90 hours. So just clarifying that. But this is just a basic form, and again, each student would have this. If there's a way to have this in a device and have it stored there and available back and forth, or again, always taking photos of this or scanning this as a backup option, but not as ideal. Here's another form. This is from a school transition program, which I like very much in Vancouver, Washington, and a wonderful transition teacher named Leslie Morrison. And this is the student's name. Where is the work site at? So where is it in the community? Information about that from the address, the phone number. We've got who's the supervisor there at that work site? What's their title? Who is the person who's filling out this form? And what's the date? And this is a form that you probably wouldn't fill out necessarily on a daily basis. This might be something you fill out on a weekly basis. It has looked at the position for this individual student and has all the tasks broken down. So here we are. Put your backpack away in the office. Get the keys and 4 towels at the desk. Unlock the closet. Get 2 buckets and fill half full with warm water, etc. so forth. She's done an excellent job of breaking down what this job is in the community for this student. And then across to the side are the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to scroll down so you can see what those refer to. And here we see the key to that. 1 is non-applicable. 2, the student has been exposed to the task. 3, performs the task with assistance. And 4, they've mastered the task. And 5, they can demonstrate this task to other people. So again, let's say on a weekly basis, I'm filling this out for this student and I can see how it is they're doing at this job site. So this would give me lots of information. The Department of Labor would love this sorts of form. If this student is at a 5 in every area or almost every area, they should go ahead and move away from this work site. They should not necessarily stay there for their full 90 hours. Again, if they're proficient, we don't want them to be replacing employees. And if they're fully proficient, it seems they should be paid to be there. But this is a great form used in the Vancouver School District's transition program. And Leslie, this is just another one. I just love the way she's broken down all the different tasks. So this is just another site, another student, another job, and it has all the tasks broken down. Nice and clear for students. Also is really clear for whoever might be supporting that student, right? It's a clear indicator, and I would also think if you had a substitute paraeducator or someone who had not necessarily been out to the site with a student before, this would be very clarifying as to what the progression of the job was as well. But again, this is just a different one, but just an excellent job of looking at what the different tasks are. I wanted to share a website for a transition program. And this is for the they call their program the Transition Academy. It's part of the Redmond School District. Redmond is in the same county as Seattle, and Redmond happens to be where Microsoft is located. So if some of you have heard of Redmond, it could have been in connection with Microsoft. Interestingly enough, this is, of course, their basic site. It's got lots of information on it with some pull downs here. But if I scroll down, they have a parent portal and a student portal. So, of course, there could be information in the parent portal which wouldn't necessarily be available to anyone like you and I who are just logging on, who could have information about what's going on that week in the program, anything that needed to be brought in for students, etc., so forth. So we have all these basic information down here. And here's the website for their transition program in their school district, and it's separate from their school district's website. But I like the parent portal and the student portal. And also teaching students to use that student portal, I think, would be a wonderful option as well. And Kelly, was Lavinia able to get the audio and get that portion to work for her?
I believe so. I text her. Oh, yeah, she says yes. So I don't know if you have, Lavinia, if you are able to activate your mic, if there's anything you want to add at this time.
I'm curious, Lavinia, what you think about the website and the forms and the mission, vision, value stuff. And I know that you had things you wanted to add as well.
Okay, sorry, I had to enable her mic. Let's see if it'll work now.
Okay, we should be up and running. Can you guys hear me now?
We hear you, Lavinia.
Okay, great.
Hello.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Marsha. I think you did a great job showing kind of all those components. I definitely agree with having the two different brochures. I did the same thing. I had one kind of for parents and others that, you know, families and other teachers actually in the district to kind of let them know what the program was about. And then I had the other one that was really intended for employers when I was going out and trying to develop new sites or just connect with employers for opportunities for students. I would use that one, and it was designed a little bit differently. I think the web page is a great idea. I wouldn't want people to get super overwhelmed and think, oh my gosh, how am I going to find time to create all of this all at once? I think you just kind of, you know, start small and keep chipping away at it, and try not to get overwhelmed, and see who you can also kind of pull in that has maybe some skills and expertise in some of these areas, like layouts for brochures and building websites, and try to get some folks to help you with that while you kind of provide the content. Maybe they could take over some of that tech part of it. The only other thing I would really add is I found when I was teaching post high school for quite a few years was, although I had some of these wonderful things, and but you know, you have to make sure that the message gets out and that you get it to the right folks. And specifically what I'm talking about is really making sure that your high school teachers and other, you know, team members that are involved at the high school level and also junior high level are really understand what your post-high program is about, and you know, how to best prepare students for that. I found that, you know, we know the reality of turnover in different schools, and so you're always kind of having to continue to get that message out and make sure those teachers fully understand. And I would even really highly suggest that those teachers come out and spend some time out in the community really seeing what that post-high program looks like, so they really understand how to best prepare students in their settings, in their buildings, because it looks so different in schools and post-high school. And so I think we just do a much better job of preparing our students if we make sure that we communicate that to all the folks that we're working with in our districts.
That That's a great idea to invite the high school teachers who have the students before they come to transition out to see some of the work experience sites, so they're able to articulate it to families and to students as expectations of what transition will be like.
Right, and I think it also really kind of gives them some great information, and really then has those teachers teach differently, because they understand that maybe some of the things they're doing going on in the classroom that they're teaching aren't going to transfer very well to community settings. And you know, I've definitely seen some changes in the way teachers have taught in response to that, and also utilizing the community more at the high school level, so that students are even more ready before they come to post-high programs.
Lavinia, what do you think about the forms or some means of tracking what's going on at work experience sites, so we can look at that information and get that information back to the IEP teacher who might not be out at the community sites all the time with the students? Or what do you known to be used, or how do you feel about it?
Right. Well, this is something I probably struggled with the most. This is always a challenge, and you know, when I had 4 or 5 paras, all in different directions at different sites, that alone is a difficult thing to manage. And then on top of that, making sure data is with the right person and at the right place and gets back where you need it to get, it was always a challenge. And so we did start going towards devices and phones, and I didn't get very sophisticated with that. And I know actually Murray has done a lot with that lately. The teachers who are not on this webinar today, but I believe Nicole, the team leader, is, and she could probably even speak to that more, but I know that they're doing some pretty neat things with their phones where they're just putting data into Google Sheets, and then everybody can access it from anywhere on any device. And so I haven't actually seen that, but I think it would definitely be worth contacting the Murray team to see how they're doing that, because I think it's working quite well for them.
And that makes sense. And I know programs too to be moving away from the paper sorts of things, where it's just pretty easy if you have a smartphone. It's also less obtrusive, or to be, for instance, with the old clipboard or something, to be able to just fill that out and to send it in as well. But it's definitely easier, and then available to more people, able to be sent really quickly, etc. so forth. Yeah, I agree.
And I think along the lines of, when you were talking about sharing progress and data with family and other members of the team, we did a lot of, phones and taking short videos of students actually doing these tasks out on job sites, and then, sending that to parents or posting it on Facebook or sending it to others that are on the team. Of course, given that everybody has permission to do that, that was really powerful. And I think also just a super wonderful, powerful, like positive thing to do for parents, for them to see that progress was really neat. And they felt very involved, more involved in what was going on with their student.
And again, if the support people have something like a phone with them, if we don't get caught up in making these high-tech videos or high-tech forms, again, let's just keep it simple, but making those little video clips of how the student is doing and getting that information to families is a great idea. And I've seen parents who cry when they see those, because they had no idea that their sons or daughters could do that sort of thing. Parents who didn't know that their sons and daughters were perhaps working in a kitchen that had sharp objects. That's one of the things I've heard. I've also heard taking videos of their sons and daughters when they've learned to get on the bus or cross the street, etc., so forth, and just getting that information back to them, that I think just sets the bar a little bit higher for everybody as we go along and show what's possible. I've also seen students who really like those videos and like to use those to share themselves. And sometimes if the student has a phone, some students do and some don't, asking their permission to, can I take a video clip of you out at the work experience site too, and then that's something they can carry home with them as well. And I've seen that starting